views and opinions expressed by Shelly Kemmerling in this podcast are her own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of any other organization or business she may be affiliated with, including but not limited to discussions regarding the proposed NAR settlement.
Welcome to another episode of Greenwald and BC's podcast, What the Builder Knows. And with me today, I have an expert with me, Shelly Kemmerling from Mount Pleasant Baker Caldwell Realty, bringing you some information today about a topic that came up a few minutes ago between Shelly and myself. And Shelly, I heard I was traveling there about a few months ago, and all of a sudden I heard some news piece about National Association of REALTORS and other folks there's some kind of lawsuit went on, and then they made some settlements and some agreements, and it's going to theoretically revolutionize how buying and selling goes from buying homes. And the first thing that happens with a lot of that is misinformation gets out. And I thought we might take a chance to bring to the table, to bring to our listeners what really those rulings or those negotiations have amounted to. And so let me tee you up with that. What really happened with this buyer-seller agent thing?
So there is some allegations that realtor associations or realtor offices were colluding to fix and stabilize commissions. And what a lot of people don't understand is that is and has been since I started and for many, many years an antitrust violation. So we are not allowed to do that. We don't ever discuss. I could not tell you right now what any other office in this town has, what they list their homes for.
Like their commission percentage. Their commission rate.
Right. That has always been a policy. Somehow this became an issue in another area. And because it's big dollars and it's a big topic, it has gone across national real estate offices. There are possibly some other lawsuits out there, but NAR has addressed it, and it really isn't going to change a lot of things. Always from the beginning, the commission is negotiated between the seller and the realtor's office. Nobody else has a say in that. We don't put it in our contracts. There's nothing about that. And a seller has always had the right to say, this is what I would like to do. And you can say, I'm willing to work for that. I'm not willing to work for that. And they're all over the board. They can be fixed. There's a range of things that I've seen in commissions being offered or homes being sold for different price points. There's different ways you can structure commission with a seller. It's always negotiable, always has been, and will continue to be negotiable. The thing that is going to be different for us is in our MLS, which is where the multiple listing service, where I as an agent go to look at everything that's in my association that comes up for sale. There's a line that says what that commission offering will be if it's not your listing, you're a buyer's agent, and you bring a buyer to the table, what you could expect as compensation. That will no longer be posted there. That's the biggest change that's going to happen to our industry. And so, and prior to there being buyer agents, it was never like that either. When I bought my first house in 1987, there was no such thing as a buyer agent.
So someone could help you, but there was no one on record? or
There was no, you were always a seller's agent.
Okay.
There was never a buyer agent.
And now when you sign with an agent, they have to disclose if I'm working for the seller or the buyer.
Yes.
Right.
When you first meet someone, you need to disclose what your capacity is.
Who's your fiduciary responsibility here?
Absolutely. Took the words out of my mouth. And if you're not working with a buyer agent, it is really important that you understand that you have no one representing you in that deal.
I mean, that they're obligated to the seller, if you will.
They are obligated to the seller. Even if it's not their listing, they're not a buyer agent. And there's a fine line between a customer and a client. A customer is somebody you're helping. Right. Maybe you're writing the contract, but you give no advice.
Right.
You don't advise through the inspection. You don't advise at price point. You don't do anything. But if you are a buyer's agent, you are there to help them through the entire process. And it's to get the best price. It's to keep all their information confidential. And so I'm very clear when I meet someone who has called me as the listing agent to show them the house, that I am there as a listing agent, and I'm not there as their agent. And I encourage them to not discuss price or anything that they would not want the seller to know they're thinking at that time, because my responsibility then is to go back and tell the seller.
Got you.
So if I showed you through a house...
Don't tell me your top secret information.
Don't tell me your budget. Don't tell me I don't even want you and your... Let's say you and your spouse are going through the process and you're talking amongst themselves. If I hear that, my responsibility is to go back. And so it's important to understand the value of a buyer's agent. And there are so many things that go through it. We, as an association, do not want to see that help be taken away from a buyer. And some buyers, if they have to pay the buyer agent fee outside of the purchase of the home, because the seller has said, I'm not willing to give that compensation to the buyer's agent. I'll give my seller's agent, I've had situations like that before. You just need to understand, and the lender needs to understand, that's going to be an expense of their purchasing the home. And so it's not, the myth is that they're trying to reduce the purchase price of the home.
So they think that this collusion, I'll use the word collusion, was running the price of commissions up, which therefore ran the price of real estate up.
Yes.
And so that was the worry that they're supposedly fixing.
Yes.
Okay.
But it won't fix, I think my personal concern is, in some discussions we've had, is that this is going to possibly prohibit some first-time home buyers from getting into their homes. They don't have 20% down. Most of them are 3 and 5%. So if they have to, and the luxury is that when they go out to purchase a home, they don't have to worry about that commission. It's in the price point. I work, this is my living. I cannot work for somebody for free.
Really?
Love to, but can't do it.
Me neither.
Right? So it just doesn't work.
My people don't work on love. My people work on paychecks.
I wish I could sometimes, but I can't. And also, so the lenders have already, they're already addressing this issue as well, because you can't sit down with your lender to get pre-approved, and then bring them an offer and say, here's an offer, and all of a sudden now there's another $3,000 expense in there that they didn't understand that they were going to have. So things will, I think, remain very similar. A lot of it is going to be, again, going back to education and knowing the job that you're doing and being able to comfortably explain to the buyer or the seller the process and why it might be important.
So are you saying there's still options? So like I think I told you previously that I've sold a house of my own in the last year or so. So in that engagement, when I hired a realtor to list my home and be my agent on the sales side, there were buyers that approached with a buyer's agent, and my understanding is the commission that I paid to my realtor got somehow split with the buyer's agent. Yep. I don't know if it was an exact split. Wasn't my business. Didn't care.
Right.
So I paid that fee, and that fee then compensated the buyer's agent.
Yes.
Is that still possible in this?
Absolutely.
Okay. So it just can't be advertised in the MLS.
Correct.
Okay.
And it's not even that we were advertising, but it is, I guess, perhaps they're saying they want to take away any illusion that we're communicating our commissions through that channel.
Got you. Okay.
So, I mean, it's also assuming that everybody's doing a 50-50
But
split.
conversely then, and this is the case that we always could have, I could have told my agent, no, I only want to pay your side. I don't want to pay the other side. If someone brings a buyer's agent to the table, they got to bring their own money. I could have done that before, and I still can do that today.
Yes.
Right.
And what you can say is, or I'm only willing to do this, and what you do with the other, that's yours.
Right.
And so, so right now, an agreement, if you're in the association, the law is that if we're in the same association and we all agreed to that sharing of commission. But if I go to another agency, if I go to another association, if I go to Midland, if I go to Clare, I just sold a house in Flint not very long ago. So that has to be addressed. When they go to show the house, am I going to get compensated, or do I need to tell my buyer? And so that's how we do with, so really what's going to happen is we're just going to have to do that in our association again, as well as out of our association. So those are the big things that are going to happen. But I really believe that an agent is going to have to be confident in their knowledge of what's going on. Pay attention to what's happening in your industry. I always encourage that. It's my livelihood. I know that you're very involved in the Builder Association.
Sure, yeah.
We can't go about our day and not know what's going on in our industry.
Right.
And so, and we want our buyers to be protected. Like I'm very, they're my people now. They're part of my family, my extended family. I'm excited to see where they go and what they do with the house. And it's like my own little HGTV before and after. And I want to see them and their kids and their family. So I care about them and I want to make sure they're protected through the process. And there are so many things that can come up that you don't know about. And I learn something new every day.
Oh, yeah. You're always learning.
Yeah. How important is a first right of refusal? Well, I found that out the hard way. I didn't know that early on. And I've had to track down, people did things the old handshake way. And all of a sudden there's nothing recorded. And I have a gentleman trying to sell a property and I don't know if he has the right to do it. I have to contact the guy who sold it to him, who's passed, so I have to contact his wife, and she has to tell me when. And we have the title company looking at divorce records to find out if he actually, through his divorce, got the right.
A little bit of cleanup there, then.
Yes, yeah. And the average buyer doesn't know how to do that to get themselves to that point. And just with the time of transfer, that's confusing to a lot of people. Or seller concessions and how those get worked into an offer. So
you're strongly an advocate of being represented by an agent, regardless you're seller or buyer. And if you are a buyer, then you're saying find a relationship, find a buyer's agent, sign up, and you'll just have to have a conversation with your buyer's agent, whether you're going to be paying the commission or whether the property you're potentially buying will be buying or paying your agent. And it can be property specific then.
Yes, it is going to have to be. This is, when we're looking at these homes, this house, just so you know, and we're not trying to be prejudiced against them, but they have to understand what the cost to purchase that home is going to be for them.
Yeah, so like when we sold our home, I think when we got an offer, we got some kind of sheet, I don't remember the name of it, but it basically said what I'm going to walk away with after everything's satisfied. So you'd kind of have to make a prospectus like that and say, here's what it would look like in this house. If you put this kind of offer on the house, here's your really out-of-pocket expense. This might be different than that one then. So
I always use the $100,000 as my benchmark because it's easy numbers for me. If you're a seller and you tell me I'd like to walk away $97,000 from this home after your commission maybe, then that's how we determine kind of what we might want to negotiate between us as my compensation. If a buyer comes then and you say they maybe need $3,000 of compensation to their agent, they're going to probably now come back and not offer you $100,000. They might have to offer you $103,000.
Got you.
Or we could have just listed it at $103,000 and made it about all even. Ultimately, that bottom number is what's important to you, the seller.
Right.
I coach my clients, my sellers, as how we get there, because we have seller concessions, we have other closing fees. They know that before they put
there's taxes involved.
Yes. Yeah. We talk about that before we ever list the house. I give them a prospectus of 3 different price points.
Now, that's a great question. Did you have, or do you have most of your sellers tell you what they want out of it, or is it the other way around and say, what can we get out of this?
That also could be property specific. Some people have a debt they have to retire out of there. So that I have to know. And so I sit down and I do my first job as a market analysis, because I look out to see what house is similar to theirs sold for and tell them what I think they can get for it. And then we sit down with a sheet and say, if we list it for this, this is what you could anticipate as your check walking away. If we list it for this, and they can say, okay, let's list it here, and this is what I'm hoping to get for it. Some people have a bottom line they cannot go below, because then they have to bring money to the table and cash out. Right. So that's a topic you have before I ever put a sign in a yard and ever put it on the MLS. And when I get an offer with all the things that are part of that offer, we have to look at that again. See how it compares. Yes.
So we did ours a little different, I guess. We chose a realtor. I know too much about the business. I could be the worst client in the world, so I chose to be a good client. And I said, let's do this the other way. You tell me what you think you can sell that for. I mean, just what's the value? And they did their market research, and they brought a few homes to us and said, this one's like yours, this one's like yours, it's square foot price, blah, blah, blah. Here's the number I think. And I said, and if that's the number you think, that's the number we go with. And so they listed, and we did all the pre-stuff. They listed, they had an open house on Sunday, and we had 2 offers on Monday. And one had contingencies and one didn't. And so we selected the one with no contingencies. Pretty easy business, right? But I was like, I didn't want to be that terrible client and saying, but I need this much, or I think it's worth that much. I'm like, doesn't matter what it's worth to me. It matters what somebody else thinks it's worth. And my realtor thought it was worth. And you know what? Turns out that's exactly what we got. We got exactly the number that they said. So I guess that was, to me, I'm saying, listen, even though I think I know a lot about housing, I know that the realtors know what today's prices are.
I absolutely refuse to what I call shoot from the hip. Walk through my house, or you've been in my house. What do you think it's worth? I'm like, well, first of all, I came to your house as a guest. I didn't actually scout out the square footage of your home while I was there having a cocktail. So I am all about the numbers, and I tell my clients, there's only 2 things that are going to affect your price: how bad somebody else wants it, and what the market says it's worth. I'm just there to help facilitate and get you that information. I never will tell somebody what to list their house for. It's my spiel, but it's not my money, not my life, not my house. I'm just there to do the work to help them make the best decision possible. And I feel that's my goal.
I get that, but talking to you here this morning, you have a lot of care and passion for your people. So I mean, you say that like you're cold, but you're not cold. You do care about your people. I mean, you do care about your clients and the people you serve. Well, let's jump into that just a minute. I mean, do you think we solved that NARI thing? Do you think we?
Hopefully so. I don't think, I just think there is a lot of misconception out there, and everybody that's in the industry, and it happens with everything. You just feel frustrated because it's not really telling the true story. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to do that.
And that's for all the realtors. Everybody's going to operate by these rules. Doesn't matter who you select, if you're the buyer side agent, the seller side. So the door is always open to all the options still.
Yes.
There
just how we share that information between offices.
There just can't be any impropriety, appearance of impropriety.
Yes.
That's what they're trying to remove. Yes. But still, everybody who works is going to get paid. You just got to figure out how they're going to get paid. So if you were paying, depending on the relationship, if it was a 5% relationship, a 6% relationship, a 7% relationship, whatever those relationships were, that's probably the same kind of math. It's just who's paying it, where's it happening, who's responsible.
Yes.
Whatever the math is.
If I were at a bar or out to lunch with another agent, and we got into that conversation, always from the time I started real estate, that's an antitrust violation, and it could cost me my job, along with some money. It's never been appropriate. So nothing has changed in that per se. And I know if I've ever been in a situation where I even feel like it, I just walk away. I don't want to have anything to do with anything that's
I think people always, at least we feel that as builders that people think one guy's expensive, one guy's less expensive, whatever. But we find if you compare apples, which is really difficult to do, if you compare the services people are giving, the quality of the work, et cetera, that usually the prices are pretty close. And I'll give you a perfect example. The other day, I have a large remodel and I have it under contract. And the roofing is something that our team could do, but I know somebody who's better at it, a good firm in town. And so I reached out to them and said, would you give my client a number on that? And so they gave me a written proposal, and I forwarded that written proposal to my client. And I will tell you, it was like $15,700, and I had proposed to my client like $16,350. I mean, we were within like $500. Like, so what I'm saying is 2 good people that do the same good things are usually about the same amount of money. And if there's a huge disparity in the money, you're probably getting a different level of service.
I believe so.
Yeah, I believe so. This is 2 professionals talking, right?
Right.
But so if anything's too cheap, or if somebody says I'll do that for you for X, which is only half the amount of somebody else, okay, maybe. But what are you getting for that? So just be a little careful.
Right.
Don't think this is this new agreement saving you a bunch of money. But, so I thought I would talk to you about just if we put a pin in that one, is you've shared with me a little bit about your passion. What is your why? Why do you do this? Why do you like helping people? What's your why? Oh,
wow. So I have found this job to be so fulfilling that I never thought I wanted to do this. I thought it was sales. It's not sales at all. I am a matchmaker and a troubleshooter. That's what I do. I bring buyers and sellers together, and I put out fires along the way. But when I can step in and give somebody the keys to their first home that they thought they could never get to, that's a pretty good feeling. But I've had a lot of clients, and I probably do well because I have a lot of life experience, and I just recently went through a similar situation with my parents, where I've had to help families come in through that hard time where they're either having to move parents into assisted living, or they passed and they have to go through 60 years of life in a house and they don't even know where to start.
Right.
And
the sentimental side of the transaction also.
Yeah. And likewise, I've had some people who've lost a spouse or a family member that it's the reason that they have to move. It's not always a job or a new baby. And sometimes I feel if I can make that process easier, that's my goal through the whole thing. And it's just a satisfaction, and I don't even know how to explain it. It's a way for me to give back that maybe I can't write a $10,000 check to an agency, but I just help somebody through a really difficult time.
I think some of the best whys are actually hard to explain. They asked me to write something the other day about why I like to be a builder. So I'm like, I have no idea. It's just it's who I am. Mm-hmm. And that sounds like that's what it is. You know, if you find people that have passion and care, they'll probably be pretty good at their job, no matter what their job is. And if they really are caring about their client, they're going to look for the best opportunities, the best service. I don't care if you're talking about a doctor, a counselor, a plumber, you know, it doesn't matter what you're talking about. And then your agency, your profession as well. So since you love it, is this a great field for people to go into? I mean, do you need agents? Is it something a young person could start out in?
Sure. I wish I would have started younger, honestly, but I thought it was sales. I didn't know what it was until I really got into it and talked to some other agents and got serious about making this transition. But we have some great young agents coming up in our office, and they have a new perspective, and they're great with the new technology that's out there, and they've got a lot of energy. And at this point, if they start, they'll have a fantastic career in it. You just have to do it for the right reason. And
not just for money, but
no.
Find your why, and your why might be chauffeuring people through some of the most intense times of their life in terms of emotions. There's a lot of emotions tied to homes.
Yes, and it's hard. I mean, you can have clients in tears in your meetings because they're
for
overwhelmed.
Good and bad reasons.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, tears of joy and tears of sadness.
Yeah, and it's a great feeling to know somebody trusts you enough to get them there. So I mean, when you say, what's my why? I mean, when I started, I want control of my own schedule. And, you know, the mentor that I was working with said, sure, you can work whatever 55 or 60 hours a week you want. So it could be morning, noon, and night.
Part-time. That's what I say. I always tell people I work part-time. I only work 8-hour days, 12 or 8. I only work 12-hour days, half-time, you know, like it's only part-time, you know, 60-hour weeks are short. And people are like, what? I said, but the upside was when I finally matured enough, I could be at the things I needed to be and work later to make up for it. That was the upside. Like I could be at a 2:00 appointment for something for my children for a conference if I wanted, and then I could work till 7:00 if I needed to, right? There was a time shifting a little. I think realty profession's similar to that. You're going to work some nights and weekends.
Sure.
That's when people are available.
Yeah. So, you know, if Monday rolls around and I can take a day, I'll do that because I know I'm going to work Saturday and Sunday anyway.
Right.
And I know I might be answering the phone at 9:30 at night, and, you know, I might start getting calls at 7:30 in the morning.
So it's a different lifestyle. You can't begrudge when the clients reach to you because, you know, they're having an emotion. They want to have that emotion right now sometimes.
Yeah.
Right.
So I grew up on a dairy farm, and then I did hospitality for over 30 years. So I've never been a traditional job kind of person. I don't want to sit at a desk, and that's just always been my lifestyle. It's been variable times, but no 2 days are the same, and that's why I like this job. And I'm
So it's a fulfilling career.
It absolutely is. When I talk to you about how we learn what our compensation will be, this probably makes me a really bad business person, but I almost never know what that is until I get go to the closing. I'm every month. It's not the prime thing that drives me. I don't ever let it steer me to a house or to a sale or anything. I feel if I do my best job and keep the client front of mind, it'll all come back in the end and reward me long term.
I think that's a good thing to tell people. And if you find a person you trust. So if you're a buyer or a seller, you find someone you trust and you feel like you can communicate well with them, if you think they'll have your interest at heart, the money is just something that'll work itself out. Like, just make sure that you can trust, you can communicate well,
Right.
and that you can take to heart all the things they say, like guidance and the counsel that they're going to give you, because you're going to get some guidance and counsel, right? There's some things, there's some terms, some things that you're going to jump some hoops you'd never imagine, right? So a lot of times, what you guys in your closing process, you're removing hurdles constantly. That's what you're doing. You're just there's all these things. Everybody's rolling the boat a different direction. You're trying to steer them all one direction, and there's this imaginary date out there, and you're trying to be ready. Right. So that's what you're doing. So it can be a little confusing to both buyers and sellers sometimes. So again, I would say that the trust factor. So what do you foresee in this industry in the next 12 months, the next 5 years? I mean, like this landslide decisions that have occurred, and the market has been red hot, and it's a little cooler now on account of not enough supply. Like, if you had to wrap your hands around a crystal ball, what do you see?
I think we're still going to go forward in 12 months, and we'll be in a very solid situation still next year. I don't see people not wanting to use agents. I know there's some fear of that, but because of the hurdles that they have to jump through, and it's always changing. And we are very big on ethics and law and education. Matter of fact, fun fact, the Realtor Association is the first one to ever have an ethics mandate in their policies back, 100 years ago or whatever, when it came into play. But I think people still need help. It's just like they're still going to need help building. You don't know how to proceed in an industry that is not something you specialize in. And I think the rates will hold. I just think the economy it's not great. Certainly different for me this year than it was in 2020, 2018, 2019.
We're seeing a difference too. I mean, there's still lots of work, but it's different.
Yeah, it's not overwhelming. Like
the euphoria is not there right now.
Right. And I can take a couple of days off and not not feel bad, or not have to not show how, I mean, in 2021, I didn't even want to go on vacation for a week because things happen so fast and so quick. You don't even want to be out of your...
Opportunities were lost.
Yeah. And so I think we will go forward, and I don't want to go, but I think a lot's going to happen. We're always in a state of unknown during an election year.
Sure.
And that's where we are right now. And I felt like this the last time the election went around.
Yeah.
And...
well, I've been at this game a long time, and I take more counsel now from anybody, and yourself included. The reason I ask these questions is because I find value in them too. You can look at historical data, and I do a lot of that, but it feels like we're always in some kind of unprecedented time. I mean, it just it seems like there's one event to another that you wonder how it's going to change. And so 34 years in here, I do have these patterns, but the patterns are always seemingly to be broken, and I'm wrong a lot. So I like to ask people because again, I've heard time and again that pricing went up too fast and it's going to come back down. I don't see pricing coming back down. I see the rate of increase might slow, but to tell you, in my industry, our economists say that we're going to continue to see 6 to 10% increases per year in the cost of input. So input, if you will, in the farming world, it's the seed and the fertilizer and what grows. Well, we have our lumber and our foundations and our labor. And, so for instance, we're a very good company to insure. So, I mean, we have very limited risk. We have good mitigation processes. And our insurance policy went up 12% this year. So, during these unprecedented times, like we always talk about, all our costs are rising constantly. And so I don't see it slowing down on my build side. So I think that's going to offer the buy side or the sell side an open door, because if it gets more and more expensive to build, it opens up the floor, if you will, for the top end on yours. Now, unfortunately, whether jobs can afford that or not, that's an entirely different conversation. That's not, we
need to bring an economist in for that.
And I say, unfortunately for me, I buy shingles or lumber on a national basis and bring them to a locality. I can't decide whether the locality can afford that lumber or not. It costs the same for the lumber no matter where it's at. labor might be local, so we might pay more or less across Michigan depending on where we're hiring labor. But those national economies, which are they change, but we pay based on the national, but we try to localize it. That's Mount Pleasant's not got a significant amount of revenue in most people's pockets, so that is a little bit challenging for us for sure.
Well, and we've in Mount Pleasant, we've just seen our two biggest industries that we have here, which is the hospital and the university, have just not been the turnover employee-wise has not been there. Bringing in new professors, new doctors, that's been a lot slower in the last couple of years from where it was.
They're not growing and adding and people coming in. So interesting. Well, I think we've taken a lot of time here. What have we not talked about this morning that we need to talk about, Shelly? What's important that our listeners would know?
Oh, well, we've covered a lot of stuff.
You've only got like 1,000 things in there that we haven't talked about.
Well, I think it's just important that you, if you're a buyer, just do your due diligence before you get in over your head, because nobody wants to have to go through that part. And the same with if a seller, there's no crime. And I interview for first listings, go in, talk to other people and see if you're actually getting the best agent for you. We get into a lot of financial stuff, a lot of emotional stuff, and you need to have the right person there that you have. So I feel like when I meet someone, we're interviewing each other.
Sure.
Do I want to? Yeah. I don't have to work with anybody.
I feel the same.
And so we're trying to find out if we're a good match, and if they're comfortable with me and I'm comfortable with them. In my history, I feel pretty good that I've only had one client really probably out and out mislead me and lie to me about their financial situation and what they could do. It's a lot of wasted time if that happens.
For both parties.
For both parties. And you bring in a lender because we refer. And if you have a trusted agent that you've worked with, go back to them. That should be an open door all the time. If you need to find, I feel like I'm as good as the resources I have with me. Do I have a good plumber that I can read?
Sure.
Are they going to return phone calls? Are they going to show up? Are they going to do the right job? We recently had you guys come out and look at a listing for someone and doing a little bit of inspection in the attic. They were not comfortable with just the general inspection. And they were impressed with me because I knew you. And I could give them a solid, qualified person quickly.
I'm hoping my listeners will be satisfied with me because I know you. So this is a two-way street.
Yeah, and they didn't even want to do an inspection because they had felt like previous inspectors. And there's somebody who'd moved like 18 times because of her job.
So she's good at it.
And so they knew, they were that person that kind of knew, but because of the referral that I gave them for inspectors, and then, they wanted to know who else would do it. And luckily I could pick up the phone and shoot an email to your office, and I was able to get somebody quickly because timing is a lot when we're in the middle of an inspection period. And they were so happy that did, but it really made me look good. And so I think that it's important to know that you always have that door open when you get there. And when you are listing, what is that agent going to do for you that somebody else won't?
So I have a saying that I tell people a lot, and then I think we'll wrap this one up. But I say there are people who are competent and there are people who are confident. And sometimes when you're interviewing, I don't care if you're talking about hiring anybody to do a service for you, it's natural to gravitate and like the person who's confident, because a confident person can tell you what they're going to do. But sometimes you want the confident person, the person who is, or a competent person, not the confident person. Not saying that I'm not confident and shouldn't be hired, but sometimes the person selling you a whole lot is not the person capable of doing you everything. Make sure you're finding the competent person, the person who's going to follow through and take care of those things. And sometimes the people that's not sexy. It's not sexy to have the person that's willing to clean your plumbing pipe, right? I mean,
yeah, absolutely.
But that's a person you need in your life. So when you're looking for a realtor, make sure you can build a relationship with somebody that's very competent and not just confident and tells you, "I'll take care of it. Don't worry." Make sure you do your homework and find somebody that you know is successful consistently. And there's lots of them. There's probably a couple hundred agents in town, right?
Oh yeah, everybody knows. I mean, if you have a kid in school, you're going to probably know 4 or 5 parents that are realtors.
I mean, for us, when we sold our home, It was like choosing between your kids. Like, oh, great, I got to call a realtor. Like, who am I? I'm making 199 angry and 1 happy.
Yes.
So it was just something we had to do. But anyway, well, I think we've covered that topic pretty well. Appreciate your time here this morning. We'll wrap it up because I try to keep these from being too long, but I'm long-winded. But anyway, it's another episode of What the Builder Knows, podcast by Greenwald BC, trying to introduce you to experts like Shelly. And thanks for being with us this morning.
Thank you for asking me to join you.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a great day, everybody.